Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Antonio Gomez. I am based out of the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support. I will be your moderator and technical support for this session. Please hold all your questions until the Q&A portion of the chat, or feel free to post them in the Q&A window so that we can address them as we see them, or the chat. Either way is fine with us. As long as we can see it, we're happy to take care of it. This webinar will also be offering closed caption, so feel free to turn that on. If you have any questions about it, you can go ahead and post them in the chat and I can help you out. We will also be recording this webinar so that it can be used at a later date. The recording will be posted to apprenticeshipillinois.com and you will receive an email when that is posted. All right, take it away, Nate.
Thanks so much, everybody. Today, my name is Nate Carlson, and today we're talking about the fundamentals of registered apprenticeship. This is part of a webinar series for Apprenticeship Illinois grantees and workforce partners across the state of Illinois. I'm the Technical Assistance Program Manager. I'll tell you a little bit more about what that role entails and the resources I can offer to support you and your partners as you engage in apprenticeship expansion. But first, I want to just do kind of a pitch for our apprenticeship specialists in general. You'll see up there in the corner our logo for apprenticeshipillinois.com. Tons of great free resources for apprenticeship expansion for career seekers, employers, and workforce partners alike, including contact information for our great cohort of apprenticeship specialists. Apprenticeship specialists offer completely free, full service support for developing, registering, and launching a registered apprenticeship program with the U.S. Department of Labor. They offer localized expertise and connections to funding, resources, and partners in your area, all the workforce stakeholders and services they're able to offer. They offer no-cost consultations to assess your needs and design a solution that works for your business, whether or not that's an apprenticeship program, an incumbent worker contract, some other work-based learning experience. And most of all, our apprenticeship specialists handle the heavy lifting from paperwork to program logistics. We take care of the details and have the migraines so you do not have to. So please check out apprenticeshipillinois.com. Click on the employers page to see a full list of our apprenticeship specialists across the state. If your area does not have an apprenticeship specialist, great news. That means you'll be working with me. My contact information is available on that page as well as later in this presentation. Just wanted to take care of that up front. In today's session, here's what we're going to cover. We're going to learn first what is, and more importantly, is not a registered apprenticeship program. What are the 7 components of a US DOL registered apprenticeship? What are the various roles played by organizations in the registered apprenticeship program ecosystem? How can we as apprenticeship specialists and workforce professionals optimize our apprenticeship outreach and development processes? And lastly, what information do we need to actually register an apprenticeship program with the Department of Labor? We'll start off by talking about what apprenticeships are not. Apprenticeships, first and foremost, are not unpaid internships. While there is some crossover between internships and apprenticeships because they're both work-based learning opportunities, internships tend to be unpaid, don't necessarily lead to full-time careers after you complete an internship. So they're very different in that matter. Apprenticeships are not limited to the trades or construction. Sometimes we have a preconceived notion of apprenticeships as being primarily for union trades or for, sometimes we even think of like a 1600s blacksmith or Star Wars or whatever. But whatever our preconceived notions of apprenticeship are, they are not limited to those industries. They're also not limited to young people or new hires, as is often thought. For my fellow workforce professionals, I always just like to throw in that apprenticeships are not a delivery system for corporate welfare. We're not just here to pass funds to employers. We're here to help them as consultants and provide a service that enables them to create opportunities for career seekers in their area. Lastly, apprenticeships are not a magic wand that's going to fix anything that's wrong with a business or any difficulties they're having in hiring or retaining talent. If there is issues with company culture, things of that nature, low compensation, apprenticeship's not going to magically fix all of that, though it can be a solution for employers who are facing pain points in hiring and training skilled talent. So if that's what apprenticeships are not, what are apprenticeships? Apprenticeships are paid job, usually full-time jobs with benefits. That doesn't always start as the case. Some apprentices may start part-time, and then at the end of their apprenticeship, when they have graduated, quote unquote, they may move into full-time roles. But oftentimes apprentices are full-time from day one. Apprenticeships are found across every sector and across a variety of occupations. There are over 1,300 occupations already registered with the U.S. Department of Labor. I always say everything from aviator to zoologist. Basically, if there is an occupation within an organization that requires some form of training, Most of the time, 98, 99% of the time, it's going to be apprenticeable, and there more than likely already is an apprenticeship model existing for that occupation. Apprenticeships are open to workers from all ages and backgrounds. In fact, many employers will actually start with incumbent workers or current employees for their apprenticeship programs, a sort of pilot program. And apprenticeships are a life-changing career opportunity for participants that can revise communities and revitalize businesses. This is kind of an idealistic maxim, but I like to put it in here to help us center our understanding of just the promise that's presented by apprenticeship when they're developed, designed, and executed well with the best of intentions by all of our partners. I like to make that upfront. Most of all, though, as far as we are concerned for our consulting and working with employers, apprenticeship is an investment in training and retaining skilled talent. It is an investment of time and money that an employer is making in cultivating talent for a specific occupation or set of occupations for their organization. So what that means is that an apprenticeship which does not sufficiently train or has been designed in such a way that it will not retain skilled talent is functionally null and void. It is a wasted investment if it does not sufficiently train or will not retain those apprentices. So as workforce professionals, as apprenticeship specialists, it is our role to ensure that employers not only invest in registered apprenticeship if it is the right solution for them, but also that they make a worthwhile investment. And so we take a very consultative sales approach to these programs because we're not just trying to make the sale. We're not just trying to get every employer to yes. We're trying to get employers to get to yes if it's the right solution, and also make sure that they are building a program that is sustainable and will be a good investment for them. Now we're going to move on to talk about the 7 components of registered apprenticeship. We've kind of talked broadly about apprenticeship as an investment and some misconceptions about what apprenticeship might be or what it isn't. Now we're going to move on to the brass tacks. Here are the 7 components of every registered apprenticeship program. You'll see that they are business driven. They include on-the-job learning. They help facilitate diversity. They empower apprentices to receive credentials. They are a paid job. Apprentices receive supplemental training, and they prioritize quality and safety. And we'll go into each of those in detail. First off, apprenticeships are business driven. This means employers have the final say on program design. I always tell employers when I'm working with them, neither myself nor the state of Illinois, nor DCEO, nor USDOL is going to tell you what your program has to look like. That said, DOL can say no if the employer just like blatantly is missing any of the components we talk about today or is under some of the required hour thresholds. But generally speaking, it is the employer's program. They know their industry. They know the occupation they're training for. They know their workforce needs. So we're never going to tell them how to do their program. That said, we are here to help empower their program registration and ensure program quality. So we're going to find opportunities to include employer input and customization wherever possible to really make them feel like they're in the driver's seat. But we're also going to be honest when programs are falling short because retention is important. Remember that if a program will not retain apprentices, it is a waste of time and money for everyone. Number 2, apprenticeships are a paid job from day one. What this means is that apprentices earn what we call a progressive wage schedule. So they start at some percentage of whatever the journey worker or experienced worker hourly rate for their role is. Let's say an experienced worker for the occupation makes $27 an hour. The apprentice might start at $16 an hour. That's, day one. 6 months in, they might get bumped up to $20 an hour. A year in, they might get bumped to $22 an hour, and so on and so forth. And we'll see how they earn those wages as we go through this presentation. But the main thing here is that apprentices see their wage reflect their skill gains in real time. That's one of the reasons apprenticeships have such a high retention rate. Changes year to year, but generally speaking, apprentices who complete, say, a retention rate of 95+% retention 3 years post completion. That's in part because of the transparency about wages and the expectations of them in general. Many of us move through our roles. We don't know when we're going to get that next promotion, that next raise. Apprentices know going in on paper, here's what they have to do. Here's the investment they have to make. Here are the skills they have to gain to earn that next increase in their hourly wage. These wage schedules are entirely customizable. We'll show you some examples of what they look like in the coming slides. And we can use some of the labor market information available to us through onetonline.org for determining whether or not the wages an employer is setting for their program are competitive for their area. And we'll show you about that as well. So when we talk about these wage schedules, there's three ways that a program can be formatted. In terms of three ways an apprentice can move through their program, from beginning to completing, reaching that journey worker, experienced worker status. The first is a competency-based program where apprentices earn their wage increases and progress by acquiring job-related competencies that they're evaluated on by their assigned mentors or through an employer-designed skills-based test. So you'll see what these look like later on in our presentation, but basically, if you are completing a CDL apprenticeship, you're a truck driver apprentice, and there are specific maneuvers that they might need you to do. They might say, we need to know that you know how to set up your cones and your flags if you ever have to pull off the road. That might be one of the for that occupation, and the apprentice might need to demonstrate that they can do that. Then their mentor is going to sign off on that, and let's say the employer has said every 5 competencies that you get signed off on, you're going to move up to the next level of your wage schedule. You're going to get a $2 increase. So that's that first way, is competency based. It's directly one-to-one skill gains to competency, or skill gains to compensation increases. Number 2 is a time-based approach, where rather than being progressed by their competencies, apprentices earn their wage increases by meeting predetermined hour thresholds for specific they're going to complete during their role. So let's say you are doing a CNA apprenticeship, and part of it is taking vitals or taking a temperature for patients, and they say, okay, once you've done 30 hours of that, you're going to earn that increase. So that's a time-based model. You can also do it to do like large blocks of time. So it might be day 1 you make $15 an hour, 6 months in you make $17 an hour, a year in you make $19 an hour. It can be that as well. It can be based on the hours for specific skills or just the hours they've been in the program in general. And that kind of helps employers to kind of reward the time commitment that apprentices are making. But we can also combine these models in a hybrid model. So apprenticeships can also be designed so that apprentices are rewarded for both their time in specific skills or in the program as a whole, as well as the competencies they're gaining. And this all is customizable by the employer, and we can help facilitate these. So I'll show you. This may have sounded complicated to you, but here's literally what this looks like. It's just a table with 2 columns, and both of them that I've laid out for you here meet DOL requirements. So we can see the top. This is going to be a competency-based program, and it's just a starting number and an ending number. They start at $15 an hour, and they end at $26 an hour. Just as simple as that. DOL says, hey, that looks good. You met our requirements. But we have another example below, where we can see that for 0 through 10 competencies completed, they earn $15 an hour. Once they've hit that threshold of 10 competencies, they get bumped up to 17. Once they hit 25, they get bumped up to 21. And lastly, when they finish the program, they get $26 an hour. So both of these programs meet the DOL requirements. But when we think about apprenticeship as a retention model, when we think about it as a way to reward those skill gains in real time, the bottom one is probably more likely to actually incentivize retention rather than the top. Now, I'll tell you straight out, payroll departments hate the ones that look like the bottom. They don't like changing the wages for individuals in their organization outside the usual parameters of the fiscal year or contracts. They very much are sometimes opposed to that. So we have to find, a middle ground sometimes between a pay scale with 8 rungs on the ladder and one with 2 on the ladder. But these are things to keep in mind. We talked about using LMI to ensure that employers are staying competitive when developing their program. This chart is from onetonline.org. If you haven't already used it, I would highly recommend checking it out. It's a huge source of information for training providers as well as median hourly wages for occupations, and we can actually sort down to specific regions. So we can see here I've pulled up the wages for registered nurses in East Central Illinois, and it compares what that average hourly wage range looks like in East Central Illinois as compared to Illinois as a whole, as compared to the United States as a whole. And so we can see the median wage for East Central Illinois is around $33 an hour, maybe $34 an hour, down to $25 an hour, starting up to $40 an hour. So if I was working with a hospital, developing a registered nursing apprenticeship program, and they told me our program wages are going to end at $26 an hour, I would raise an eyebrow. I would be concerned. And I would use this data to show them, hey, just so you know, that wage may not be competitive for the area. And employers are often somewhat cynical of their hires. They say, people are going to leave for $1 more down the street. And people rarely leave for $1 more, but they may leave for $5 more an hour. And so this is where we're in that kind of consultant mode, working with employers to help ensure that their programs are retaining talent. Along here,
Hey, Nate, your sound cut out a little bit.
is work site. Apprentices. Okay, it's my sound cut. Everybody can hear me now? I'm going to
Yeah,
start this
we're
slide
good.
over.
We missed. Yeah. Yep, that's perfect. Thank you.
So apprenticeships include on-the-job mentorship and learning. Employers assign each apprentice in their program a mentor. This might be the same mentor. It might be, the department manager, but they're also going to establish a worksite ratio of how many experienced workers they're going to have on the worksite to apprentices. This is in part for safety. We don't want employers loading up a worksite, especially in something like construction, with a bunch of newbies who maybe don't know what they're doing. That's unsafe. So establishing this ratio helps ensure that there are safe work sites. However, it also ensures that there is mentorship available to all of the apprentices. And those assigned mentors are going to be the individuals who monitor apprentices' progress through their program on behalf of the employer. They're going to be the ones signing off on competencies. The apprentice might job shadow the mentor. They may work on the same work site with them. They may have regular check-ins with them. This is going to vary by occupation, by industry, by employer. In some settings, it may not be feasible for them to constantly work alongside their mentor figure. For example, obviously, if they are a CDL apprentice, they're probably not going to have their mentor in the truck cabin with them every day. But there are some occupations where they may be able to be on the work site with them throughout the entirety of their program. Regardless of the program model, all apprentices must complete at least 2,000 hours of on-the-job experience. That's regardless of program occupation and program format. So even if it's a competency-based program, and they say, hey, this person sped through, they knew everything, we signed off on all of them, they still have to get at least 2,000 hours of on-the-job experience in. Now that's roughly 1 year of full-time employment is that 2,000 hours. So if we see a 4,000-hour program, that's about 2 years full-time, 6,000, 3 years, and so on. This is why it's all the more important that programs tend to be full-time from day one, because other times it's going to take apprentices a long time to hit that 2,000-hour threshold if they're only working 15 hours a week. Apprenticeships include supplemental education. You may also hear this referred to as related technical instruction, or RTI. What this means is they must receive at least 144 hours of classroom learning per year of their program. In the vast majority of programs, this training is fully funded up front by the employer. This is not a requirement, but it is the case in the majority of programs. Some employers may instead use a reimbursement format where the apprentice pays for the training up front, and then the employer, reimburses them for that expense after the fact. And obviously, again, this comes down to employer discretion. However,
Having the employer pay up front, A, reduces barriers for those who may not be able to afford the cost of the education on their own, and B, it opens the employers up to a number of incentives, including the Apprenticeship Illinois tax credit, which we'll talk through in a bit, as well as for incumbent worker training funds through their local workforce area. Uh, Community colleges and industry recognized third parties like CompTIA are the most common training providers for an apprenticeship program. Generally speaking, community colleges are very well equipped to provide this training, and in many instances can also provide additional services like case management, and we'll talk through that in just a bit. And this training can be front-loaded or kind of organized, built into the program as necessary to fit the occupation. So obviously for something like CNA or CDL, they literally cannot do the on-the-job work experience legally until they have the certification. So for programs like that, they might do all of the training up front, and then they'll go into the work on the job work experience. Similarly, some community colleges offer programs where they're in class 2 days a week and then they're on the work site the other 3 days a week. There are lots of ways this can be set up. It can also be backloaded if necessary. The main thing is they have to get those 144 hours in during that calendar year of the program. And it's worth noting that 144-hour threshold is a floor, not a ceiling. Many of the best programs, the high quality programs, go well above that 144-hour threshold. That's really going to be based on occupation. In the majority of instances, it should not be a problem getting to that 144 hours. And we'll kind of talk through some of those scenarios. Apprenticeships help facilitate diversity for organization. Programs are designed to reflect the communities in which they are located through strong non-discrimination, anti-harassment, and recruitment practices that ensure access, equity, and inclusion. All apprenticeship programs have standardized hiring requirements and hiring processes to ensure that all applicants to programs are being weighed against the same metrics and go through the same process. So you can't have somebody who does one phone interview and gets hired versus somebody who does a phone interview and an in-person interview and a call back. It's a standardized process to ensure equitable treatment of applicants. Apprenticeships help ensure quality and safety. Skill competencies are standardized for each occupation to ensure a quality of training outcomes. The worksite ratio of mentors to apprentices helps facilitate safety. And as specialists or workforce professionals working with employers, we can take on an advisory role to help employers design programs with high quality apprentice outcomes. I mean, we want to ensure that not only we're training people up to the extent necessary for them to succeed in their career trajectory, but we're also fighting to make sure that any additional credentials, compensation can be built in. Apprenticeships provide credentials to apprentices who complete. All apprentices who complete their program receive a portable, nationally recognized Journey Worker Certificate from the U.S. Department of Labor. However, additional credentials such as licenses, degrees, and industry or college certificates are often built into apprenticeships as part of program development. One of the easiest ways to select the coursework for an apprenticeship program as you're designing it is just to look at what certificate programs are available through the community college. Recently, I was working with an agricultural organization on something for pork producers. And so we looked at what are the animal or livestock certificates available through the community colleges and kind of work backwards from there. If they had a certificate program that fit the bill, that's perfect because it means the apprentice is getting the training they need. They're also getting a credential and they're also clearing that 144-hour threshold. Additionally, designing a program around a credential, again, helps us to connect the employer with those incumbent worker training dollars. And better credentials ultimately equal a better value add for apprentices, which helps not just with the retention of apprentices who know they're going to earn that degree or certificate by sticking with the program, and they're going to earn it debt-free, of course, but also it's going to help for recruitment because when the employer or American Job Center staff are promoting the program, they can say, hey, you're getting a debt-free college degree or a certificate or a license, etc. Now we're going to move on to the various roles played by organizations in the registered apprenticeship ecosystem. We're going to start off with the program sponsor. I start off here because the word sponsor is confusing because when we hear the word sponsor, we tend to think oh, that's who's paying for it. But that's not what we mean in regards to apprenticeship. A program sponsor is the entity that is legally responsible for an apprenticeship program and maintains its documentation with the U.S. Department of Labor. So this is oftentimes the employer. However, local workforce areas, community colleges, community-based organizations, and other organizations can all act as sponsors on behalf of an employer as a service, as a means of easing that process for them. The primary responsibility of an apprenticeship sponsor is to ensure that apprentices' information is kept up to date in RAPIDS, which is the Registered Apprenticeship Partners Information Database System, and also notifying DOL when apprentices complete their program so that they can be mailed their certificate. That's not like a huge lift for an employer necessarily, but we know that HR departments and small businesses especially are often have enough on their plates. And so providing this service is one way that local workforce areas and community colleges and other organizations can help make it easier for employers to administer an apprenticeship program. An intermediary organization provides services to apprentices and apprenticeship employers. Those services may include case management for the apprentices themselves. It may include providing wraparound or supportive services to apprentices while they're in training. It may include pre-apprenticeship skills training or offering train-the-trainer mentorship training to employers, to the mentors they're going to assign to those apprentices. And it may include providing that classroom instruction. So community colleges often function as what we call high impact intermediaries because it's almost like a one-stop shop for the employer, right? They're getting the classroom training for the apprentices. They're getting case management for the apprentices. They're getting supportive services from the apprentices all in the same place. And that's great. Community colleges are some of our most valuable partners in apprenticeship expansion because oftentimes they already have an existing infrastructure for providing that case management and support. They have tutoring available on site. They're able to catch if apprentices are underperforming in their coursework. And so many of our partners who work closely with community colleges see it as a lot easier experience because the employer has a clear like kind of baton handoff from program registration into program upkeep and maintenance. There's not just okay, your program is registered, good luck with that. It's okay, your program is registered, and now you're going to be working with the fine folks at blank community college who are going to be helping you out. Apprenticeship training representatives, or ATRs, are representatives of the DOL Office of Apprenticeship. If that doesn't mean anything to you, that's fine. Let's back it up real quick. So all states in the U.S. are either Office of Apprenticeship states or state apprenticeship agency states. What that means is some states kind of regulate and administer their apprenticeship programs through a state agency, and some do so through the federal government through the U.S. Department of Labor. Illinois does through the U.S. Department of Labor, and so our ATRs are the staff who approve and help us revise our programs. The ATRs are the on-the-ground staff in Illinois. They work closely with our apprenticeship specialists. Illinois has like 4 ATRs and a lot of businesses. So our specialists kind of help, share the workload of the ATRs who otherwise, didn't necessarily have the capacity to work with employers as closely as our specialists can. So our ATRs love our specialists because they know when we submit a program, they're not going to have to go through and revise a bunch of it. We know what they're looking for, and our programs get approved fast. But our ATRs are still great partners to work with. We always advise apprenticeship specialists to be in contact with their area's ATR as they start working with an employer to keep them up to date. ATRs also help program sponsors develop or revise a program. They keep sponsors aware of any relevant policy changes, and they assist sponsors with affirmative action planning. It was the case previously that all program sponsors had to complete an affirmative action plan within 2 years of program registration. Currently, that is not being enforced by the current administration, but that has been a service ATRs have provided in the past and may do so in the future. Our regional specialists, we talked about earlier, we kind of pitched them. Here's a little bit more background information on what our specialists do. They are funded by the Apprenticeship Illinois Grant Program through awards provided to local workforce areas, and they own the development and support of their regional work-based learning ecosystem. Our apprenticeship specialists provide an end-to-end concierge services to employers looking to develop or join a registered apprenticeship program. And our apprenticeship specialists work closely with their DOL reps as well as their integrated business service team partners. This says most of that again. Again, the main thing, our specialists are doing in-person and virtual apprenticeship outreach through events and employer consultations, but they're not just doing the outreach. Once an employer is interested, they're going to fully develop and register their programs, as well as connecting employers to other intermediary partners and applicable services in their area. For example, once an employer has registered a program, our apprenticeship specialist might say, hey, do you know how we could recruit for this? We're going to work with our local IDES Title III to do a job fair. So it's not just about doing the outreach, and it's not even just about doing the registration. It's about being a local hub of resources for employers interested in work-based learning. The next role is the integrated business services team itself. This is comprised of the WIOA title partners, as well as local economic development and chambers of commerce, community-based organizations, secondary and post-secondary education institutions, municipalities, state agency partners, and the LWIB staff themselves. The integrated business service team and their collaboration is pivotal in providing referral of services for employers and apprentices looking to get involved. And everyone has a role to play. If you're on this call, you have a role to play. Frontline staff can help recruit and refer apprentices, and our business services staff can recruit and refer businesses. So regardless of where you are in the workforce ecosystem, you have a role to play in helping us expand work-based learning and apprenticeship. Now we're going to change gears and we're going to talk about apprenticeship outreach and development. So the goals of our outreach are a few. First off, apprenticeship is oftentimes kind of an abstract concept. Maybe before today, apprenticeship was an abstract concept for you. Hopefully, we've made it a little bit more tangible. And that's the goal when we work with an employer. We want to take them from just, okay, I'm interested in having an apprenticeship, to thinking about what their apprenticeship is going to look like. Employers oftentimes fear that apprenticeship is going to be overly bureaucratic. There's going to be tons of red tape involved. And we want to help them see that it is a concise, streamlined process. We want to take employers from a consideration mindset and move them into a design mindset. The analogy I often use here is when you walk onto a car lot, the salesperson does not assume that you're deciding whether or not to buy a car. They know that you're on a car lot, you're probably looking to buy a car. Instead, they want you to decide which car to buy from them. And so similarly, when we meet with an employer, we just don't want them to consider having an apprenticeship program. We want them to be thinking about how they're designing and going to implement their apprenticeship program. Employers who reach out to us may not be connected to workforce and WIOA partners. We often say WIOA is the best kept secret, right? So we want to take those employers from a potential state of isolation to a place of interconnectivity, where regardless of whether or not they end up implementing an apprenticeship, they are connected to all of our WIOA partners, all of our integrated business service team partners, and are able to access those resources. And maybe down the line, they'll be interested in apprenticeship. We never know. Lastly, we want to take employers from a place of interest to a place of investment. So how do we accomplish that? We want to start by debunking some apprenticeship myths that may come up when we're meeting with employers. The first of these is that apprenticeships are only in traditional sectors and union shops. Non-union shops are sometimes very afraid of apprenticeship on the off chance that, well, we're going to have an apprenticeship and suddenly we're going to have a union. That's just not how it works. Apprenticeships can be found across all industries and occupations, and the majority of apprenticeship programs in the United States registered apprenticeship programs in the United States are non-union. Apprenticeships mean red tape and bureaucracy is another myth. RAPs are business driven. Registered apprenticeship programs are designed and driven by the needs of businesses. And our apprenticeship specialists help to ensure a streamlined registration process for employers. That's what we're talking about right now. Apprenticeships are internships and are exclusive to new hires. We talked about some of this earlier, but there are many differences between internships and apprenticeships are open to all employees of an organization. Lastly, there is a belief that apprenticeships are too costly with too little return on investment, but this is also wrong. Apprenticeships help employers build a pipeline of skilled, job-ready talent, and by the second year of an apprenticeship program, businesses see an average return on investment of $1.50 for every dollar invested, or $150 for every $100 invested. So we've talked about how streamlined and easy the process of registering a program is. We've talked about how our specialists make it easy, concise. What does that mean? If you're the specialist, and some of you are, what are you actually needing to get from the employer in order to register their program? We have boiled it down, simplified it to 3 pieces of information, categories that we need from employers to develop a program. We call them the 3 C's of registered apprenticeship: competencies, coursework, and compensation. And we're going to talk about how we can acquire all of these pieces of information in as quick and painless a process as possible. The first C is competencies. What skills should the apprentice have by the time they have completed their apprenticeship program? What do they need to know how to do to be successful in the occupation the employer has selected to train for? Coursework is the second C. What training will the apprentice receive to support their skills growth? What classroom learning are they going to undergo that's going to help with the skills growth they're experiencing on the job through their mentorship? Lastly, the third C is compensation. How much is the apprentice going to be paid, and how are they going to earn their wage increase? We looked at one of those wage schedules earlier with the number of competencies in the left column and the dollar amount per hour in the right column. That's that third C. And so the 3 C's are a complete package for registering a program. But what's nice is about 80% of the paperwork for a registered apprenticeship program can be completed on behalf of the employer and ready to present to them before you've even met with them. And you're saying that's impossible. We'll show you how we get there. But for the competencies in coursework, for the competencies for the occupation, and for the available coursework that the apprentice is going to take, we can brainstorm, we can research, and we can prepare a menu of options prior to actually meeting with the employer, which we then can present as a full package to the employer during our initial meeting and revise as necessary. The compensation piece is obviously going to be down to the local market and the determination of the employer. But as I noted earlier, we can research the local market wages and then work with the employer to develop that wage schedule after we've met with them. And sometimes we see hesitance about doing too much too soon with an employer. But really what this is about is, again, moving them from that abstract concept of what is an apprenticeship to here is what your apprenticeship can look like. Here is how we can help you facilitate this vision. So first thing we're going to do when an employer has been referred to us, or when we've reached out to them and received a response, we don't do a ton of cold calling in our apprenticeship outreach, just because we have so many incredible partners in our integrated business services teams, whether that's our Chamber of Commerce, our local community colleges, who already have existing relationships with employers. So we don't really need to do so much of that cold calling work because we already have an ethos, a relationship that we can build upon through our partners. But when they have been referred to us, the first thing we're going to do is ask them where they're located and what positions they're looking to develop an apprenticeship program for. But even if they don't tell us that, we're going to research their organization. We're going to read their website. They usually have an about page. We're going to look at reviews for the company on Glassdoor and LinkedIn. And what we're doing there is really looking for red flags. So if we see a bunch of 1-star reviews on Glassdoor saying, there's no room for promotion here, they never hire from within, we're going to consider that. Similarly, we're going to look at what job postings they have available online, and we're going to check and see if they appear on our area's Help Wanted online report through IDES. We're going to look at job postings because the employer may not have a conception of just how many possibilities there are with apprenticeship. The example I always give is, I used to meet with a lot of hospitals, and, obviously hospitals always need the same things. They need CNAs, they need registered nurses, they need phlebotomists, they need respiratory therapists, and all of those are great, and all of those can be apprenticeships. But one thing I was noticing with a specific hospital that I was looking for is they were consistently posting for at least 2 calendar years the need for a cybersecurity specialist or an IT network specialist for their organization. And so when I wanted to meet with the hospital HR, that was not on their radar for what they were considering developing an apprenticeship program for. But I know that can be an apprenticeship, and so I can prep paperwork related to that occupation so that we're expanding their imagination of what's possible. Maybe they don't move forward with that immediately, but they know it's a possibility now. I mentioned the Help Wanted online reports from IDES. They put these out for every economic development region every month, and this is what it looks like. It shows the top employers who have had job postings online for your area, as well as the actual occupations they were posting for. And that crosswalks to ONET, which crosswalks to apprenticeship.gov. So any of the occupations you see on this list, we can pull up on ONET. We can see what the wages are. We can see what the ETPL and training providers are that support those occupations. And we can actually see in many instances the apprenticeships that are already registered for those occupations. So this is a great resource. Obviously, not all of the occupations on here are apprenticeable. Not all of the organizations on here are necessarily going to be interested in apprenticeship, but it's a good way to do a temperature check for your area each month, see what the labor market needs are. So once we have received occupations from the employer or through our research, sometimes it's super easy. They'll just email you and say, hey, I need something for CDL. Hey, I need something for an industrial maintenance technician. And that's super easy. Sometimes we've also researched. So we say, okay, they're manufacturing. They need industrial maintenance technician, but they also need CNC programmer. So I'm going to prepare for that too. So now what we can do, I mentioned there's over 1,300 occupations already registered with the Department of Labor. For each one of those 1,300 plus occupations, there is already a template apprenticeship or work process schedule is the term we use that can be customized that already exists. So what that means is a lot of the paperwork for us is already done. All we're going to be doing is revising, tweaking it, getting it to where it needs to be. And I'll show you what that looks like. And that will be our first C. So how do we get this? We go to apprenticeship.gov. You'll see at the top there, we have drop downs for employers, educators, and resources. If you click on any of those, you'll see an option for Occupation Finder. We click on that and we're going to get to a page that looks just like this. And what this is going to allow us to do is search through all of those 1,300 plus occupations for what we're looking for. We can put in an ONET code here if we've been browsing that way. We can also just type in the job title, and they have tons of alt text options, as we'll see on the next slide, to pull up regardless of what the employer is calling the role in their organization. So we can see here, I looked up an automotive technician specialist occupation. We can see the ONET title and ONET code, as well as a list of alternative occupation titles that'll come up if we search. And then we can see here, we actually have 3 different existing apprenticeship models that we can choose from in finding a template. So the one I have expanded here is automotive mechanic. And we can see here that it actually offers us 3 different versions of that template documentation, one for each format of program. So we have one for time-based, one for competency-based, one for hybrid. But we also have 2 other options that are already registered with DOL. So we can see that a shop did one for auto radiator mechanics, and we did one for a hand spring repairer. So if I was working with an employer that had a very specific need for, radiator mechanics, boom, that's already done for me. Let's assume I'm working with, a more generalist auto mechanic. So I'm going to go with the one I have pulled up. And this is what that paperwork looks like. You see, it says work process schedule. It has the job title, the job description, the ONET code, as well as its corresponding RAPIDS code. It gives us an estimated program length for how long it will take an apprentice to complete this program. We'll see that this is formatted for a competency-based program, and then we can see what those competencies are. So we see inspect vehicles to determine overall condition, and then a specific competency of inspect vehicles for damage and record findings so that necessary repairs can be made. And for each of those 1,300 plus occupations, paperwork just like this already exists. So what I can do when meeting with the employer, if I'm meeting with the auto shop, I can bring this and say, hey, we need these 3 C's. The first C is competencies. Here is a template of competencies for this occupation that you want to train for. Can we look through these and see if they look good? And most of the time, the employer is going to look through this and say, hey, this is right on the money. They may add some competencies. They may say, hey, we've really been doing a lot with electric vehicles lately. Can we add some competencies in for that? Say, okay, sure. They may say, hey, we actually don't provide some of these services at our shop. Can we take those out? We say, okay. And so again, it's about revising. Once we've revised this, and I can't stress this enough, this is just a Word document. Very easy to revise, very easy to work with. We have that first C. These Word documents that all we have to do is make little changes to working with the employers are about 50% of the paperwork we need to register a program. So that's our first C. We've identified the competencies for a role. The second C, coursework. So we're going to go to identify the available training curriculums in our area. So we also ask, you'll remember, the employer's location. So we're going to determine which community college district they fall into, and we're going to look at the community college curriculum. Ideally, we're going to partner directly with the college so that they can present their own curriculum and any services they have available. They may not be. Not all colleges have the capacity to do so, and so that's fine too. But still, we're going to do that research on behalf of the employer. We never want the employer doing any of the legwork. We're doing it so they don't have to. So we're going to go to the community college and we're going to look at the certificate and degree programs they have available. So let's say I was looking for something to facilitate that auto tech program. I would go see, okay, does this community college have a certificate program available for automotive technician? Do they have a degree program available for automotive technician? I'm going to look at those programs. I'm going to say, okay, I see the options they have available. How much does each of these programs cost? What is the cost per student broken down with tuition, fees, the whole shebang for that certificate program? What's the cost for the degree? What scheduling options do they have available for this? Are they offering night classes? Do they have asynchronous coursework available? Do they have 2-day per week scheduling? These are all pieces of information that are going to be important to the employer in making an informed decision about which training program is going to best coordinate with their apprenticeship. Now, community colleges aren't always going to have curriculum or scheduling options or price points that are necessarily the employer wants to use. So we say, okay, because remember, ultimately, it always comes down to the employer's needs and their determination. So we're also going to look at industry and online training providers. We work closely with organizations like IMEC. We look at things like CompTIA certifications, Google certifications, whatever is going to best fit that occupation. We want to be sure that we're doing that quality control. We don't want goodtraining.com, easytrainings.ru. We're not necessarily interested in that. So we want to make sure that we're looking for accredited training options when we're working with employers. The majority of the time, you're going to be able to find some combination of either in-person training or online training that's going to help you hit those 144 hours. If you're ever struggling with that, if you're like, Nate, I just don't know, the occupation's too specific, we don't have a training provider in our area, that's where we always say, I'm available as a resource. I have a pretty good knack for tracking down this kind of stuff. I'm always available to work with you to find training providers for an employer for a program. And I'll be honest, there are some occupations that are tough. Respiratory therapist, I mentioned earlier, for healthcare. Not a lot of community colleges that offer respiratory therapists. Not a lot of universities with respiratory therapist programs that are necessarily affordable for your average employer or something that they're willing to consider. And so that's a tough one. But most of the time we can find ways to make it work. So what we're going to do is present a menu of curricular options to the employer. Not only are we going to present them with options for those templates, we're also going to show them, here are all of the options. We have 2 community colleges that the area you cover. They have 5 different programs we can look at. We've got 2 associate's degrees. We've got 3 different certificates of varying lengths. Here's what they cost. Here are the courses they would take. Here are the key contacts. We're going to present most of what we've talked about today. We're going to talk about the 7 DOL components of apprenticeship. We're going to talk about how the model fits into their current business operations. Because here's the thing, a lot of employers already have some form of onboarding, right? They already have some form of mentorship or job shadowing or train the trainer built into their practices for hiring and onboarding talent. So this doesn't represent a huge change for them. You can very easily incorporate a registered apprenticeship into your existing workflow. We're going to talk about any applicable WIOA services like on-the-job training, incumbent worker contracts. We're going to talk about the Apprenticeship Illinois tax credit, which is a $3,500 to $5,000 tax credit per apprentice per year as a reimbursement for educational expenses. And that's where it becomes important that we've determined what the cost of those degrees and certificate programs we've looked at are. Because if I can say, hey, here is a great automotive technician certificate program that's going to cost roughly $4,000 in total. I can tell the employer, and hey, you're going to pay that up front, but all of that's going to be reimbursable through this tax credit, or all of that's going to get covered by this incumbent worker contract. And it really helps the employer connect the dots of not only the apprenticeship model, but how our workforce system can help support it, make it more cost neutral of an investment for them. And so if we present all of this, all the employer really has to do is say, thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs, we got to make some revisions. And so all we've got to do then is revise that competency list, revise that nice clean Word doc. We're going to finalize any coursework selections. They're going to say, okay, this is the provider we're going with. This is the coursework we're going with. And we're going to discuss and finalize that progressive wage schedule, which again is just as simple as a table with 2 columns. Here's what they're going to do. Here's what they're going to get paid. Those 3 C's, competencies, coursework, compensation. That's everything we need to register a program with the Department of Labor, plus a few additional miscellaneous pieces of information. We need to know what's the size of the company, what's an address for the company, what are the standardized hiring procedures for the apprenticeship we mentioned earlier. We need to have that laid out, like step 1, they submit their resume. Step 2, they get called, they do a phone interview. Step 3, they do an in-person interview. Step 4, they're hired based on so-and-so's decision. We're going to ask them any minimum hiring requirements, such as do they need a driver's license? Do they need to be a minimum age? Do they have to be able to carry a certain amount, stand for a certain amount of hours? We need that spelled out. Are they interested in opening up their program to other employers? Some employers provide their own training in-house, which they are able to do. If they have the facilities available to do so. So maybe they want to open that up to other employers in their same sector, and they're going to charge them a fee for the training, but it's going to be available for the area. If they do so, they're going to need to get cleared by the Illinois Board of Higher Education. We can talk about that process another time. Most cases, this is not going to apply. Are they going to pay for classroom time? Employers are not required to pay for the time that apprentices spend in the classroom. It is oftentimes a best practice to do so, just because imagine you are an apprentice breaking into a new career field, working 40 plus hours a week, and then maybe taking 9, 12, 15 college credits on top of that. That's a recipe for burnout. And so some employers stipend the time that apprentices spend in the classroom. Some provide like a weekly $50 for gas. Some of them pay apprentices minimum wage for the time they spend in the classroom, and then their apprentice wage for the hours they spend on the job. DOL doesn't need to know the details on that. They just need to know yes or no, are they going to be compensated for classroom time? We've covered a lot today, and we have plenty of time now for Q&A. I just want to make it clear, I am here as a resource to support you and your partners. We have open office hours Monday and Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Webinar Mondays notwithstanding. I'm open to employers, grantees, workforce partners, intermediaries. Oftentimes, I will do employer consultations with our new grantees just to lay out some of this information. Sometimes I'm just there as backup. Maybe you're getting the hang of this stuff, but you don't feel totally confident because what if there's a question you can't answer? That's great. My calendar is your calendar. I am happy to hop on and be there as a resource for you. We have tons of print materials and existing webinar recordings available at apprenticeshipillinois.com. And I am always inviting requests for additional resources, one-pagers. If there's something we covered today that you're like, I would love more details on that, more help on that, please reach out to us and let us know. We are always trying to create new resources that are helpful for you. My email you can see on screen is ncarlson@niu.edu. I invite you to reach out to me for whatever you need as it relates to program development. And so now we have a big chunk of time available for question and answer. And so I know we are a small but mighty bunch here today. But if there are any questions on anything that we've covered, please feel free to come off mute, come on video, drop in the chat. Anything I rushed through that you want me to go back and cover again. I know I talk fast. I know this presentation is like drinking from a fire hose. Please let me know and let's get it taken care of. I don't want anyone going away from today confused or unclear on something. Not seeing any questions. I'm going to give it another 30 seconds or so, whatever. Again, feel free to jump off mute, feel free to drop in the chat. And I believe you're going to get a survey when today's webinar ends. Please fill that out and provide any feedback. If you thought I was great, if you thought I was horrible, either way, it's super useful. Our grant manager, Chase Martin, is here. He's also available to answer any questions you may have in terms of the reporting side of things, the fiscal side of things. Please know if you are an Apprenticeship Illinois grantee, we are here to support you. If you are not a grantee, but you are interested in helping expand apprenticeship, we are also here to support you. Apprenticeships rock. They're easy. They're not as hard as people think they are, and they can change lives. And that's what we're here to help facilitate. If there is nothing else, if there are no more questions, I'm going to turn it back over to Antonio to close us out. And I'm going to say thank you all for your time. And thank you for working to expand work-based learning in Illinois.
Thank you so much, Nate. If we don't have any other questions, I will go ahead and close this out. So this is your final warning. Any questions? You can drop them in the chat as well. Going once, going twice, going three times. Excellent. This recording will be up on apprenticeshipillinois.com. You'll receive an email whenever that's ready. If you have any questions in the meantime, I'm also going to drop my email in the chat. Happy to be a resource to you. Thank you so much for being here today, and we're going to go ahead and log off. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.